Gyan, you interned, like you said, at the startup that was started by IITians and which was meant for a graphic designer, but then you started designing the websites. Then you interned at Zomato. And then you started interning at Microsoft through IDC because they came through campus placements.
That's true, right? So the Microsoft internship was that's one thing I didn't. I did apply in that they came to for campus recruitments, and I sent in my portfolio. But that was a relatively easier process because the placement cell handled a lot of the back and forth. But do I did there was a task that I had to do. Then there were, I think, 2 or 3 rounds of interviews, and then I got the internship.
What was the task?
I don't remember. I think, yeah, wait, I do remember. So I had to design uh, an app for an employee at a company to manage expenses during a trip and then submit a reimbursement form. And so this is something people working at larger companies have to do a fair bit. If they're ever traveling for work, they need to track everything that they're spending on and then apply for a reimbursement later. So I think I designed a chatbot that would let people just sort of use natural language to say, hey, I spent this amount on this, and then click a photo of the receipt and just sort of have it automatically convert into a spreadsheet at the end of the month.
That's a good task for your internship actually. And what were the kind of follow-up questions that were asked during the interviews?
Again, this is I think over a year and a half ago, so I really don't remember.
Okay.
But I mean, these things tend to be the same. I think I've given enough interviews by now that there's a pattern, and they will try and ask you about your process for solving the task. So, what were the considerations you had in your mind? Did you do any research? What did you find out? And then they might try and ask you about specific design decisions and see if you had a rationale for doing what you did. And I think when you're starting out, there's a tendency to just do things and not have an explanation. And later on, hopefully, you have a reason for doing what you're doing. But often you're just doing the same things, but you're better able to express why you're doing it. Because as designers, sometimes there is also sort of an intuition that you develop over time, and to be able to explain why you did something in words is a very important skill. And perhaps that's something that and that's basically what you'll be asked in the interview. You'll be asked why you did what you did, and if you have a good answer, and if you can defend that answer with some data, hopefully, or some research, then that's ideal.
Yeah, that's true. That's definitely true. Same thing for what to include in your portfolio, right? If you're saying you're good at something, you should have your proof of work for that. Like you should have things to back it up. Otherwise, you would not be taken seriously, or you would not be taken to the next round if you don't have work that backs up what you're saying that you're good at.
Yes, and you should. My approach has always been to show everything, but show the best things first. And every time, and in design interviews, you typically will not have time to talk about more than 2 or 3 projects. And so, uh, maybe if you want to if you're trying to focus on one type of thing, say you're trying to focus on your skills as a UI designer, then keep more of that in your portfolio. If you want to be if you're trying to apply for a UX position, try and show some research that you've done and some analysis and what insights you got out of it. Um, and but since a lot of starting positions tend to be generalist positions, then maybe it's best to show end-to-end work. So show a project where you started with research, do some insights, did some explorations, tried to sort of evaluate some of those explorations with real people, then maybe did a few rounds of iterations, and then ended up at a final product. And so this is sort of generally the double diamond or user centered design process that a lot of people will follow, and
Yeah.
it's very important to follow that process. And it's a little bit boring sometimes. It can feel like it's very tempting to jump steps and just end up at a solution, and that's something I've done personally as well. But the the process is there for a reason, and if you are able to show that you followed the process in at least say 2 or 3 projects, then having that on your portfolio is extremely valuable.
For sure. Like I'm totally aligned on what you're saying. Like that definitely matters as well. Like if you are, as a beginner at least, you should go towards the more generalist approach. And the only way you can prove that you're good as a generalist is if you can show as many, like if you can show your breadth, like how well you cover your breadth in terms of work. Moving forward to your work at Microsoft, can you tell us more what your work at Microsoft was like?
So at Microsoft, I was part of something called the Foundry program. So design internships at Microsoft happen both as larger 6-month internships for colleges that have one full semester dedicated for internships, and as 2-month internships for colleges that have a smaller internship period. And so the Foundry program was a sort of a slightly different experience than the larger 6-month internships. And there were teams of 3 to 4 engineering interns and uh, one design intern that worked together on a project. And this sort of and you had mentors from Microsoft. There was one design mentor, one engineering mentor, and one product management mentor. And this sort of mirrors how teams at Microsoft and most other large tech companies work. There will be design, development, and product management. And so our team worked. I can't talk too much about it as this was work done under an NDA. But my task was to uh, again conduct user research for and since this was Microsoft, most of what Microsoft does these days is focused on the workspace. So they wanted me to look at how people in the workspace manage their tasks. And so I conducted user research, and I talked to, I think, 12 or 13 different professionals to check how they manage their tasks. What does their day look like? When do they plan their day? How do they do it? Some people use to-do apps. Some people might use their emails. Some people prefer pen and paper. So I did a lot of work around that. And then the second part of the project was to identify ways where I could use Microsoft technologies to make that process simpler. With the rationale that a lot of people waste time trying to figure out what to do, and if you could sort of guide them through that, maybe help them allocate time to do certain things, um, or maybe suggest related tasks or do that sort of stuff. And it was quite an open-ended project. They didn't give me an app to work on. They didn't tell me what technology to use, but they told me to look at what existed at Microsoft and if I could do something with it. So and I worked with the engineering team to sort of understand where Microsoft's natural language processing and AI capabilities were.
Right.
And since I myself had enough of an engineering background to be able to figure out some of it and say understand how an API works, how accurate or reliable the artificial intelligence results were, and how sometimes there are confidence intervals. So if you have a higher confidence in a result, you might try and show it differently than from a lower confidence result. And I mean, so what I ended up building was this sort of hack on top of Microsoft To Do, which is a to do app by Microsoft. And when you put in a task into To Do, it would parse it and understand what you wanted to do and suggest one-click actions for you to be able to do it. And it worked surprisingly well because I had a great team and we were able to work together. So we had a working demo where, say, if I put in talk to Mayank about interview, it would, and if you were a contact in my contact list, I could just um, get a button right there to start a conversation with you.
Oh, nice.
So, and there were some other things that we built as well. So I identified a couple of common workflows, and then we built these sort of smart actions around each of these workflows.